I'm delighted to be able to introduce this discussion on the challenges of regulating in the public interest with two regulators who are both compelling thinkers while getting on with the job. Ajit Pai is the chairman of the Federal Communications Commission of the USA, having previously served as a commissioner from 2012, and he recently announced he will step down from this role in January 2021. We shall miss you. Michel van Bellinghen is the incoming chair of the group of European regulators, highly influential, BEREC, and is also the chairman of the Belgian telecommunications regulator, the BIPT. Without further ado, and with our thanks from the IIC, let me hand over to our remarkable discussants, Ajit and Michel. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much, Andrea, for your hosting us for this conversation, and more importantly, for all you've done for the IIC over the years. You've been a good friend to us, and it's difficult to think of someone who's more collegial, more influential in this space. And it's good to see my friend Michel as well, who's done just a fantastic job in Belgium. And I can't wait to see how he lends his expertise to the leadership of BEREC. The entire continent is so lucky to have the benefit of your expertise on these issues. So congratulations to you on assuming the chair of BEREC.
Thank you so much, Ajit, for this very kind words. Yes, this is a very exciting time for me and for my organization too, and I'm really looking forward to it too. That's totally correct.
Absolutely. And as I understand it, there are a few topics that I thought we might want to discuss that could be useful. And of course, first and foremost among them is the pandemic, which has been a challenge, of course, for each of our countries, each of our continents. And just be curious what strategies you've employed in Belgium or that you've seen your colleagues employ within BEREC that have been effective in addressing the communications related challenges from the pandemic.
Yes, thank you, Ajit, for this very important question. But of course, with this pandemic, we have learned a lot. We have learned to react very swiftly because we needed to monitor the networks. We wanted to avoid any kind of congestion on our network. So we set up a kind of monitoring system with all colleagues within BEREC, and we also had a joint statement with the European Commission in March, and so we could keep the control during all this month, both on a weekly basis, and when this was more or less under control, every 2 weeks or every month. So it was very useful to have this monitoring system in place to cope with the increased demand on the networks. And we also, as you probably know, had a kind of understanding with the streaming platforms where they were asked to offer standard instead of high definition quality for video services, which could help also. So as a result, no main congestion could be observed in any European country, nothing more than the usual. And also, I have to add that it was also a very important test for our net neutrality regulation. You know that in Europe, with this system where operators are authorized to apply exceptional traffic management measures just to prevent congestion. But there is always one important condition. It's that equivalent categories of traffic are treated equally, respecting this net neutrality regulation. But of course, another lesson we have learned is that connectivity has never been so much important in our lives than during this pandemic, and there is a lot of work, a lot of challenges related to connectivity we have to tackle in the coming months and in the coming years. Coverage is certainly an issue we need to crack, and not only for the very high capacity in networks, that's a start, but just for more or less correct broadband connectivity. You know that in Europe, in total, you have about 15% of the population without adequate broadband connectivity, which very important, of course.
It's amazing as I hear you talk, so much of what you said applies equally to the United States. As we confronted the pandemic in March, it became quickly apparent to me as well that connectivity would be critical. And so we initiated what we call the Keep Americans Connected Pledge. We asked broadband and telephone providers not to cut off consumers who are unable to pay a bill because of disruptions caused by the pandemic. We asked those providers to waive any late fees and also to open up any Wi-Fi hotspots. And we also challenged them to go even further, to offer low-income consumers special plans or to work with schools and libraries and hospitals. And I think that was the kind of public-private partnership that was very helpful in the United States. We could have gone through the regulatory process to essentially force them to do X, Y, and Z, but we thought a quick-moving public-private partnership was the better way to go. And it sounds like in Europe as well, you've had a very collaborative relationship between the public and private sectors in Belgium and across Europe. And it sounds like that is the kind of model that's been very helpful to you over the last 9 months.
Yes, you're totally right. This happened in Europe too, and then there was a range of different measures depending on the situation, allocating more spectrum on a temporary basis, or issues related to consumer protections with the bad debt, as you mentioned it, and also related to number portability. There was a range of measures, and all that will be assessed in a kind of exercise we will do next year to try to have an overview of all the lessons learned from this COVID period. Of course, you're totally right, indeed.
And it's funny you mentioned spectrum, but that has been one of the interesting lessons that we have learned. We've also granted emergency access to some of the smaller providers, and they have used it in incredible ways. We've been hearing stories from some of these providers, especially those that serve rural areas or low-income areas, that they've been able to use some of the spectrum in, say, the 600 megahertz band or the 5.9 gigahertz band to increase access to almost double the speeds that they're able to offer. And for us, at least, it's a nice lesson that the more agile and nimble the FCC is in granting access to spectrum, we can be assured that the companies will use it to deliver value. And so that's one of the things we're learning as well. The other thing we've learned is that telehealth also has very interesting applications during the pandemic. Our Congress gave the FCC authority and funding to set up a new telehealth program. And we've done that now. We've given funding to different organizations from New York City to very rural and poor Indian tribes in the West. And they've been using it for connected care, as we call it. I'd just be curious, have you seen anything like that in Belgium or any other interesting applications of broadband that you would think
that's related to funding? Not really. I don't think we have this mandate to apply such a scheme. So no, not really. But it's very interesting what you mentioned, of course. Yes.
Yeah. I think the future of healthcare, at least in the United States, is increasingly patients are treated where they happen to be, as opposed to going to a hospital, a bricks and mortar facility. So it'll be interesting to see how that develops once the pandemic recedes. Another thing I noticed is that BEREC has really been a leader around the world in pushing for fiber connectivity. Obviously, we all are keen to make sure that the world goes wireless as consumers prefer, but fiber, of course, is going to continue to be critical. And I'd just be curious how, as you assume the head of the organization, how do you see BEREC's push for fiber connectivity going in the time to come?
So, of course, you're totally right, Ajit. And for the time being, you have to know that if you look at the global picture in Europe, well, you have for the time being only 44% of households could benefit from this very high capacity network connectivity through fiber. And unfortunately, it drops to 20% for rural areas. So, meaning by this that there is a lot of work to do to achieve or goals related to a gigabit society in 2025. So, as BEREC, of course, we are trying to help to foster investments, because that you know that for 5G, but for fiber also, which is by the way important for 5G as backhaul, of course, you need huge investments from the sectors, but for that you also need what I would call regulatory or legal certainty, and that's what we try to ensure as an European organization, to try to have a consistent application of our European regulatory framework. And for that, we have during the last 2 years issued 11 guidelines to help the sector, to help all stakeholders to have a clear view, and to this predictability, the regulatory predictability. You can have when investing a huge amount of money, and of course you need to know what is a very high capacity network. There are guidelines about this. You need to have a correct policy regarding migration from copper to fiber. So we have also something about the copper switch off we will develop next year too. This is very important too, to help customers to switch smoothly from one technology to another technology. Those are some examples to stimulate very high capacity networks on fiber. More specifically, you need also to have a correct overview of the situation, and so I shall call this a geographical survey of the network development, and you need for that comparable national broadband coverage and indicators. This is something else we will work on next year to help also the quality to compare the quality of service of these networks, and to see to which extent other instruments can be applied to help this rollout of fiber. And in Europe, there is a directive which will be reviewed, and for that, BEREC will issue also an opinion. This is about the broadband cost reduction, so to help operators to install those new network, knowing that the cost of civil engineering is pretty important, very high in the global picture. Another potential scheme is related to state aid for different types of areas. You know, the white areas, gray areas, and even black areas. So those are other elements which can play a role to enhance the rollout of these networks in the future.
That's terrific. And you mentioned BEREC, its decision-making process coming up. I'm sure most people understand what BEREC is, but just for the elucidation of those who might not be familiar, how does BEREC come to decisions like that, and what is its role in promoting good policy across the continent?
I think that we have a role to start with for ourselves as members of the organization, to strive to an harmonized implementation of the same rules, because the rules at European level are the same for every European countries member of the European Union. But also we also have an advisory role towards other institutions within the European community, and this is true for European Commission, but it is also true for European Parliament and the Council. So we can interact with different very important stakeholders, and this is something we will also consider as very relevant and important in the future.
Absolutely. I can't understate how complex your job is compared to mine. I feel very lucky by comparison. I have it's a challenge running one agency, but it's a single country, a big country, but a single country. And so you have to manage, of course, Belgium and then all the member states within BEREC and then liaise with the European Union. It's a challenging job, but I think it's a critical one to make sure that you're speaking with one voice and that there can be more predictability across the entire continent for all the stakeholders. That's a big challenge, no doubt about it.
But there is a kind of logic in this, because the footprint in the different member states it's not alike. It's a different history, and you can pretty well compare a small country like Belgium with Netherlands, for instance. But if you compare Belgium with Poland, it's a totally different story related to the rollout of the different networks, and so that's the reason why you need this two-tier organization, this European umbrella within BEREC, but also to have always this link with the national reality, which is it's not alike.
Right. Speaking of working across nations that may have significant differences, one of the things that we've been working very hard on here in the United States is, of course, 5G, the next generation of wireless connectivity. And I'd be curious how you think about spectrum, obviously as the Belgian regulator, but also in terms of coordination with other countries near you. Of course, that coordination is critical for these bands to be made useful for 5G development and deployment.
Yeah, of course, but you have for that different mechanism. Of course, you have from a spectrum management level the need to coordinate with your neighbors. So that is classical situation related to spectrum, and nothing really specific to 5G compared to the previous generation. That's the first one. Right. Of course, we try to get to a high level of harmonization through another mechanism, what we called the peer review mechanism. This is something new in the new regulatory framework, where we can submit our plans to our peer to receive comments, remarks, and pieces of advices to improve or schemes. This is very useful, and we do that in cooperation with another group dealing with a spectrum, the radio spectrum policy group, which is also very active in Europe, like BEREC is.
Oh, terrific. And do you anticipate that BEREC will also address some of the security issues that have become part of the conversation surrounding 5G, or will that be handled more on a nation-by-nation basis?
So to answer that question, there are two levels. Of course, at European level, there is the famous 5G security toolbox adopted by the Commission at the beginning of this year. And it is up to the member states to implement this 5G because of the national sovereignty related to security issues, of course. But having said that, we try to have a kind of harmonized approach, and within BEREC we have also a dedicated workflow related to 5G security. We have a dedicated work group, and we are working on different parameters and indicators foreseen in this toolbox. So we basically we play a very important role gathering data, just to provide correct information to other public authorities in charge with security. But it is true that there are some differences in approaches country by country, because this remain a national sovereignty issue.
Yes, it's exceptionally complex here in the US as well. And I don't know if you have this issue in Belgium, but we have several different agencies that have equities in the question. Of course, the FCC, but our Department of Homeland Security, our national security agencies, our State Department. It's the coordination just within our own country can sometimes be very challenging. So it's not easy to get on the same page.
Just the same.
Yeah. I guess if I could zoom out to just a broader question about regulatory philosophy, how do you think about your role in promoting a more vibrant communications marketplace in Belgium. What is your vision for the future when it comes to regulation?
Well, I think that what is very exciting now is that, of course, we have, or let's put it that way, or core business related to the electronic communications sectors. But we know that we have also a need to develop our expertise on adjacent sector, related sectors. And this is because of the digital transformation in our society. And so we are looking very closely to developments such as the digital platform regulation, which is a very hot topic at the European Union, as you probably know, as announced yesterday by the European Commission. There is this so-called DSA and DMA package aiming at the so-called gatekeepers to provide the European Union with a new draft regulatory framework in order to tackle some of the issues we have, because these kind of companies, those are the very big tech companies, exert a large control at different levels. And so in the end, this may impact the consumers' freedom of choice, and this is something we would like to avoid. But I guess that you have more or less the same situation in the US. There are different initiatives taken by the Department of Justice or your colleague of Federal Trade Commission. So how do you see the situation? What could be the trigger in the United States for this, if you compare the intervention many years ago about AT&T, for instance?
Yes, it's going to be very interesting. The first question is going to be just a practical one. How does the new administration follow those lawsuits? Does it maintain them, or does it change course? Assuming it keeps the current course, then the question is going to be a very interesting antitrust one, as how do the courts think about the market structure in this particular market, or any of these markets? What are the proposed remedies? Obviously the remedy depends on the nature of the anti-competitive harm, and what would the effects of those remedies be on consumers? In addition to that, there is a long-standing debate in the United States about privacy, and should there be a federal privacy law? We, of course, have California, which has a privacy law. Many of the companies that I know we've all heard of are also influenced by GDPR, and so they've tried to conform to that as well. And so should there be a federal privacy law to essentially create a single rule for the United States as well? That's something the new Congress and administration will have to confront. I don't envy their task. It's a difficult marketplace to figure out, and these are very challenging issues, but it'll be fascinating to watch on each of those fronts: DOJ, FTC, the Congress. I think a lot of people are trying to sort through tech policy right now, and there are no easy answers.
So you're not, as I understand, you're not too confident about the potential split up of very big companies. You don't think this will happen, or quite on contrary, there is a risk that it might happen?
I think there's always a risk. At least if I'm a recovering antitrust lawyer, so if I was advising the company, I would say, look, there is a non-zero risk, right? There's always a risk that a judge could say, okay, we detect there's an anti-competitive harm. If it's, I don't know, YouTube, Google, for example, could they split up YouTube, or Facebook, could they split up WhatsApp? And I would never advise a client to assume there's no risk at all. But I think the question is going to be, based on whatever anti-competitive conduct is proven in court, is that remedy actually going to solve the problem, or is it just, does it solve a different problem or cause other problems? And so that's not going to be easy, I think, for the courts to sort out. Yeah, luckily, my time on the stage is almost done, my friend. I'm leaving in January, so I can watch it as an amused spectator as opposed to a regulator. But no, I think I can't wait to see how that transpires, along with all the other things that we've talked about.
Can we talk about your future plan, or it's too soon for that?
Well, no, it's too soon, at least for me. I don't know what I'll do next. I'm leaving on January 20th, but one of the things I found in my career is that if I just focus on the job I'm doing and work as hard as I can, that the future tends to take care of itself. So I have faith that my family, my friends, my coworkers, everybody will come together and hopefully find something productive for me to do, at least for my wife's sake. I don't think she wants me hanging around the house drinking delirium tremens or eating Belgian chocolate all day. So.
Oh, great.
but no, in all seriousness, going forward, I would love to stay in touch with you. It's been such an honor.
Sure. Please do. Please do.
No, absolutely. So, as we say, mon ami, merci beaucoup, enchanté.
With pleasure.
I must interrupt you now because you have spanned regulatory philosophy and homed in with a real tour d'horizon of the importance of connectivity and modes to get to it to serve the public interest. That's what it's about in a truly holistic way. So thank you very, very much. And importantly, you both discussed the importance of regulatory certainty and also transparency, which I think you have really advocated and pushed forward. So on behalf of the sector, may I say thank you for that. Thanks again from the IIC to you for your time and for this really stimulating conversation. It's been a delight. Thank you very much indeed.